Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Dal. I want to do another video like I did for Subtlety Rogues, basically talking about subtlety and just how great it feels, and just want to show off some great games. And yet again, when you are not trying to do really well in BG, when you're not trying at all, you end up coming out with some of the best games ever. So again, I have you guys another footage off of the live stream, 720p recorded originally or streamed originally, and this is all I can work with. But I still do want to show you guys this game. It was simply a lot of fun. I got it on together with a bunch of friends and live stream viewers as well, and we ran a few BGs. This was one of them, and I feel like this BG highlights how what Outlaw Rogue is all about. It highlights the changes, the strengths, and some of the weaknesses of the spec, and overall just what the spec is all about once you get in a game, once you get in a BG, once you get out there and start playing. I just want to share this moment with you guys and talk a little bit about Outlaw and overall how it feels to play Outlaw. So for anybody who's planning on swapping from a combat rogue to an outlaw rogue, or somebody who's even going from non-rogue to rogue player and is looking at outlaw rogue, I feel like Outlaw is a very solid spec to play. Outlaw has a lot of sustained damage, it has a lot of mobility, more than we originally anticipated when we took a look at the beta. Has a lot of damage, and even the RNG mechanic of Roll the Bones isn't as bad as everybody said it would be. So Outlaw ended up being just a very pleasant surprise, a pleasant spec to play, a pleasant spec to look at, just overall a lot of fun, and it really does shine a lot brighter than Combat Rogues did at any point. Combat Rogue mechanic was fairly simple. You were a rogue like any other, you had rogue utilities like any other, the only difference was how you dealt damage. And your damage was very ramp based, you had to ramp your damage up, you had a killing spree, you had a really strong lineup whenever you used kidney shot. But that was really about as far as the uniqueness of the spec went. I mean, the spec was fairly unique, and I really did enjoy it for its killing spree mechanic of killing spree and ability that moves with the enemy. I enjoyed it for red buff insight, and I enjoyed it for the 8-second stun with the revealing strike. And then they started stripping the spec in Warlord of Jenner, and those things that I thought were really cool and unique were needed to be stripped, which took away the original flavor that I really liked about the spec back in Pandaria. But the changes were needed to be done in order to balance the game, and it did allow assassination and subtlety to shine a little bit brighter. And then all the changes with the patches came in, and the very few seasons we had on Warlords. But what was really cool about Combat Rogue back in Pandaria, it was kind of like an underdog spec. It just didn't deal as much damage as the Subtlety Rogue did. But you had the 8-second stun, you had the deep insight killing spree with Shadow Blades on top of it, so you had some viability. It was just super difficult to play, but it felt so good playing the spec as it was. But currently in Legion, if you're playing on live servers, you can't enjoy the Combat Rogues as they were, unless you're playing on a private server, which I wouldn't advise for people to play, but don't let me be your dad and tell you what to do and not to do. But Outlaw, holy crap, it is so good of a spec, and there's a lot of people that thought there would be issues with Outlaw, and I'm going to talk about these issues today. I'm going to discuss mobility and how mobility is actually not that bad. The RNG mechanic of Roll the Bones, a lot of people thought there would be big issues with Roll the Bones, and there is, I guess, some left over, but it kind of depends how you look at it, so I'm going to talk about that as well as the damage overall of the Outlaw. Some people said, oh, the spec doesn't look like it has much burst unless you get in PvP talents, you no longer have this whole ramp up mechanic, so how else are you going to deal damage? Completely understandable, and I just think that it's such a good job with Outlaw. I am super happy playing the spec on live or on the beta. I actually get to play it on the beta, and I haven't been playing beta that often as of recent, but it's a lot of fun. It's such a good spec, it plays so well, it has such a cool flavor to it, and overall the playstyle. So as an Outlaw Rogue, you're basically a combat rogue. You get into combat, and you're generating components, and you're spending components like any other rogue. Your viability is you have a little bit extra in combat CC. By giving you a gouge, by giving you a ranged stun, you can pull off a little bit of cross CC in any situation that involves more than one target. As an Outlaw Rogue, for the most part, you deal sustained based damage with some pseudo range capabilities, and you have decent mobility, you have interesting mobility altogether, interesting abilities, some cleave AoE mechanics depending on how you talent yourself, and overall I think we ended up playing Outlaw Rogue back to back for 3 hours. We even did a full all-track battle that lasted like 15 minutes. And I just used the all-track rally time, since everybody's like in those big ass fights, to practice my energy management and everything, and the spec feels so comfortable to play. If you're used to the energy management of a combat rogue, you'll feel very comfortable playing Outlaw, and it's like Outlaw is a better version of combat. I feel like it basically has all those things that combat rogue used to have, but it's a little bit better, a little more convenient. You can set up your damage a lot more often, and I just like it so much. So let's talk about the things that people have had troubles when it comes to Outlaw rogues, from roll the bones, mobility, and overall damage in today's video. So the first thing that people have had issues is, and I was not the only one who thought this would be a big issue, I thought that Outlaw rogue would have like no mobility. The only abilities you have, compared to at least Assassination Subtlety I thought would have the best mobility in the game. You have Shadow Step on a 30-second cooldown, you have Sprint, and that's just Assassination. I thought Sprint and Shadow Step are just that much better of mobility capabilities. And for the longest time I thought that they are, until I got to actually play it. Assassination has no more mobility than that, but Subtlety can use mobility through Shadow Strikes. Every time basically you use an ambush style ability, your Shadow Strike will make you appear behind your opponent. So you can use your opponent's positioning in order to get around battlefield, which is one of the strongest suits of Subtlety, and I'm so glad that they added that in the game. I'm glad that that's how Subtlety is played currently. It's just a lot of fun, just moving around battlefield, zooming about, teleporting. Outlaw actually has a lot of mobility. You still have Sprint, which is viable. You have Grappling Hook, which I thought would be just like, oh, once every 30 seconds you can basically use a heroic leap. Not that important. As a rogue, it gives you a 40-yard range. That's enough of range to get out of a bad situation or get in a good situation. Yeah, it's not quite as fast as something like Shadow Step, where you can Shadow Step kick a target as like in a moment's notice, but it is still very strong. It is still lots of mobility. It still gets you around through the battlefield. Also, one of the advantages of using Grappling Hook is the fact that it has a somewhat shorter cooldown. It's not a guaranteed shorter cooldown, but if you roll the bones and you get cooldown reduction buff, every 1 common point you spend into a finisher reduces the cooldown of your other abilities by 2 seconds per common point spent. Which, with easy math, if you use a run through at 5 common points, or even between the eyes at 5 common points, that's 20 seconds shaved off of Grappling Hook. So you can grapple and hook, stun somebody with a 5 common point between the eyes. You have 10 seconds in your Grappling Hook, so you can use it within 10 seconds again. So, just overall, this cooldown reduction, the good mobility that it provides every 30 seconds, which is a fair mobility as well, actually gives Outlaw a lot more room to move around in a battlefield, in a BG, or even in arenas. And with your pseudo range mechanic of range stun and ranged pistol shots in order to catch up with the enemies, slow them down, generate common points, and while the pistol shot doesn't actually, increase your uptime on the target, in a way it sort of does. Think of it more as pistol shots and range stuns don't let you fall too far behind. Let's say you're getting kited by a mage or a hunter, and let's say you're an assassination rogue. As an assassination rogue, when you're stuck in a route or stuck in slows back to back to back, there's not a lot you can do about it. But as an outlaw rogue, you have at least pistol shots, so you can generate common points, generate a little bit of energy, maybe score a ranged stun. So don't think of it as it adds to your mobility, it just doesn't let you fall too far behind. So it kind of makes up for a little bit of that mobility loss that you normally lose as an outlaw rogue. So think of it as it kind of makes up, and overall it feels, the most important part, it feels so good playing outlaw. The mobility is not too much of an issue. Yes, it is a bit of an issue in some situations, but for the most part, in most situations, you're just fine. You feel pretty comfortable when you play, and there's no complaints whatsoever. Now comes the big one, Roll the Bones. A lot of people have said Roll the Bones might be one of the worst abilities that have ever come up in this game. Roll the Bones might be the end of outlaw rogues alone and make them inviable to play. And I thought for the longest time, yeah, that is a strong possibility. It is an ability that gives you random buff. And some buffs, I would say, are a little bit better than others. But for the most part, all the combat buffs Roll the Bones gives you can be used in terms of increasing your damage in BGs and in arenas. First of all, you are rolling for a random buff, and I thought, what if you get the wrong buff as an outlaw rogue, right? What if you want to get a damaging buff for crit and cooldown reduction and attack speed with some leech, but instead you keep getting a healing buff over and over and over. Well, Blizzard has fixed it after a while. They changed Jolly Roger to another offensive buff. So in a way, the way I look at Roll the Bones, it varies your playstyle as an outlaw rogue. Now, technically, every single buff is an offensive buff, and every single one of those offensive buffs can be used to the full potential, whether it be extra common points for every single generator, extra saber slashes every time you hit saber slash, extra crit, extra attack speed. Every one of those buffs can be used offensively. So I think that's probably the best part about playing an Outlaw Rogue, is after they did a bunch of changes to Roll the Bones, technically you can still use them just fine for PvP. I think Roll the Bones is just one of those abilities that you have to adapt to in terms of playstyle, and that's what I've been doing as an Outlaw Rogue. And I actually have seen great results. If it gives me a crit, I want to use my big cooldown abilities. If it gives me attack speed, then I want to make sure to keep hitting somebody at all times. Whether I'm using saber slashes or not, always keep auto attacking somebody. If I get a buff like Jolly Roger, just make sure to hit my saber slash and then give it a second to see if I get a second hit off of it. So it kind of tells me slow down your rotation and take advantage of all the extra free swings you get from saber slash. Allows me to manage my combo points a little bit better, allows me to get a little bit more damage overall as a rogue, as a player, and as an outlaw, and overall it's just very comfortable. Like for the longest time I thought that, oh man, I know I'm looking for one specific buff, but instead roll the bones, see what buff you get, and then adjust your style to the buffs that you get in order to get full capabilities out of them, to get full advantage out of the buffs that you are given. And that's basically how I've been playing Outlaw. And when you change your thinking process to, hey, I'll adjust my playstyle depending on the buffs I get, it's a little bit easier to figure out how you should be playing Outlaw. It's a little bit easier to adjust to your playstyle. Instead of having to force a Roll the Bones to give you specific buffs that you have in your mind, instead you keep your mind open and work with the buffs that you are given. The last one is damage. Overall, Outlaw Rogue has a ton of sustained damage. Your sustained damage is probably one of the highest I've ever seen in the game. I think it's higher than that of a combat rogue. Combat rogues have had really good sustained damage, and it was really apparent once you went into arenas with someone like a mage, where mages normally would deal more damage than you, but as an Outlaw Rogue, all you have is damage, so you might as well just push that Sinister Strike over and over and over until it gets to the top. With the deep insight mechanic being gone from Outlaw Rogue, no longer do you have a way of ramp and burst, and most people would believe that, oh okay, so with the ramp burst being gone completely for an Outlaw Rogue, you no longer deal any damage, why the hell would I play the spec ever? Instead, you should think of Outlaw Rogue as a boomkin of Cataclysm or Shadow Priest or Warlord General. Technically, all those specs, the Boomy and the Shadow Priest, deal maximum potential damage at all times. Outlaw Rogue is a lot like those too. You're always dealing maximum potential damage, and if you are given any kind of buffs, those buffs are so much more than you could ever imagine. You're not the spec that relies on having cooldowns. Because the funny fact is, Outlaw Rogue can kill players without having to use big, massive cooldowns. You still have things like Killing Spree, Cannibal Barrage, and Adrenaline Rush, but none of those abilities really increase your damage. But as you discover PvP talents, trust me, you'll be one-shotting people left and right once you discover PvP talents. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and hopefully this has cleared some air for any of you that have been wondering about how Outlaw Rogue is played, or if you would even want to play Outlaw Rogue in the future. I'm currently enjoying the spec tremendously, and that is a spec I will be officially maining once Legion comes out on 30th, and I'm still currently playing it right now. Very much enjoying it, so much fun playing the spec, having a complete real blast playing it all together, and that's really all I can say is you definitely should give at least a look towards Outlaw Rogues, at least check them out and give them a good go. Thank you so much for watching this video. Sorry for the quality of this video as well. I really would want to hear what you guys think about Outlaw Rogues in the comments below, whether you were playing them or not. Let's also use the like and dislike. I actually like the idea of using likes and dislikes in videos. Hit like if you're really enjoying what they've done to Outlaw Rogue from going to from combat, and hit dislike if you want the good old combat rogue to come back to the game. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys having a great day. My name is Dal, and I'll see you guys in the next video.